Tarjeta. Merci beaucoup.
C'est là où il y a...
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to inform you that I will have to suspend for 5 minutes the rule regarding the quorum, so 5 more minutes. I hope that we will be able to start out of respect for our speakers and out of respect for those who were in time here, to whom I thank. Ladies and gentlemen, if you agree, I will suspend the rule of the quorum in order to be able to start out of respect for our ministers who will present their remarks. Good morning to you again. I declare open the 8th plenary meeting of the General Conference. Of course, I hope that you had a good rest after all this week, and it will be even better as of this afternoon. And I'm sure that you are very motivated for another constructive session. It is our duty now to continue with the national statements. Before we start with our list of distinguished speakers for the day, I wish to remind delegates that each statement will be limited to 6 minutes, with the exception of non-governmental and intergovernmental organizations that will address the General Conference today, who will have 3 minutes. I have the pleasure now to call the first speaker of the day, Son Excellence, Madame Athena Michailidou, Ministre de l'Éducation, du Sport et de la Jeunesse de Chypre. Madame la Ministre, soyez la bienvenue.
Madam President of the General Conference, Madam Director General, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, it is an honor for me to address the General Conference on behalf of the Republic of Cyprus and reaffirm our country's continued support to UNESCO's mission. We live in a fast-changing world, and the necessity of transforming education to keep pace with progress and recent developments is now more crucial than ever. The updated text of 1974 recommendation reflects this necessity and is an example of UNESCO's global and regional leadership on all aspects of education, reaffirming the important linkage between education and peace, human rights and fundamental freedoms, international understanding and cooperation, especially in today's most severe emergency and conflict situations, and the tragic consequences that follow them. Because sustainable development is inseparable from peace, and peace is an essential prerequisite for sustainable development. As a state party of this organization, Cyprus is committed to address disparities and progress towards a society that is peaceful, fair, and inclusive. Cyprus provides free and accessible education to everyone at all education levels without discrimination in all areas under the effective control of the government of Cyprus. The humanitarian and refugee crisis in our neighborhood have directly impacted Cyprus for years now, resulting in many migrant children enrolling in our school system. Their smooth integration is one of the main priorities of our education system. As I speak of the challenges in my region has been facing, I have to note that Cyprus condemned in the strongest term Hamas terrorist attack against Israeli civilians on 7 October. There is no justification for terrorism. Israel's right to self-defense must be exercised in line with international law and international humanitarian law. We are fully cognizant of the scale and potential repercussions of the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The need to urgently address this alarming situation cannot be emphasized enough. It is for this reason our President has announced on Thursday, during the International Humanitarian Conference organized by President Macron, Cyprus' comprehensive proposal for the establishment of a secure one-way maritime corridor from Cyprus for humanitarian assistance to Gaza. Cyprus, however, keeps facing ongoing challenges and barriers, especially in the areas not under the effective control of the government of the Republic. With the assistance of the United Nations, a pre-primary, a primary and a secondary school are functioning in the occupied village of Rizokarpaso. Numerous obstacles imposed by the Turkish forces do not allow for the smooth functioning of these schools, deprive the children of multiple opportunities and equal access to high-quality education, with determinant effects to the children's educational rights. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, the climate crisis is a wake-up call to change our frame of mind for the benefit of the planet and the humanity. Youth can be the driving force for creating a better world, empowered with the competences and tools to become agents of change. The role of UNESCO is critical for reorienting education towards sustainability. Cyprus, from the very beginning of the ESD launching, highlighted ESD as a priority in its educational policies. In this direction, we are working to mobilize actions and initiatives based on the UNESCO ESD Roadmap 2030 in national, regional, and international level. Furthermore, Cyprus leads the triennial resolution of the Human Rights Council, where UNESCO's input is integral ahead of the 58th session in 2025, in cooperation with the Special Rapporteur on Cultural Rights for the next iteration of the resolution to be circulated during the 58th session. In the field of culture, Cyprus has intensified its efforts to safeguard its cultural heritage and ensure public access to various cultural expressions. The establishment of a Deputy Ministry of Culture in 2022 has proved to be of paramount importance to strengthen the governance and management of culture in our country, fostering creativity, mobility, and fair remuneration of artists. More attention should be given to the integration of culture in the National Agenda 2030 policies, acknowledging the interlinkage between cultural and natural heritage, as well as the utilization of artificial intelligence in the cultural domain. Cyprus supports UNESCO's action in addressing the multiple risks cultural heritage faces and is among the donors for Ukraine. At this point, I wish to underline that although Cyprus is committed to the preservation and protection of its archaeological sites and monuments, the implementation of this commitment is challenged for those sites and monuments located in the non-government controlled areas, many of which have been systemically looted or destroyed or are in dire need for conservation and protection. For this purpose, a National Commission for Close Monitoring and Handling of Destruction and Illicit Trafficking has been set up. In conclusion, UNESCO's support has been impetus in forming the landscape of education and culture in Cyprus. In a world of continuous and multiple ongoing war conflicts, with all the tragic and unprecedented consequences that follow them, UNESCO remains a light of hope for the future, where we can all work together for a better tomorrow for humanity. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Minister. I have the pleasure to give the floor now to His Excellency Mr. Krastiu Krastev, Minister of Culture of Bulgaria. Mr. Minister.
Уважаема госпожо председател на Генералната конференция, госпожо председател на Изпълнителния съвет на ЮНЕСКО, госпожо генерален директор на ЮНЕСКО, Ваши превъзходителства, уважаеми делегати. Госпожо председател, поздравявам Ви за избирането Ви на този пост и Ви пожелавам успешна работа през следващите 2 години, която съм убеден ще ръководите с присъщата си мъдрост и оптимизъм. България се присъединява към изказването от името на Европейския съюз със съзнанието, че в дните на тежки конфликти, каквито са днешните, нито една организация не е в състояние самостоятелно да отговори на предизвикателствата. Единствено съвместно ни концентрирани усилия за многостранно сътрудничество чрез образование, наука и култура биха могли да дадат необходимия на човечеството резултат. От огромно значение за нас е провеждането на ясна и дългосрочна политика, насочена към опазването на материалното и нематериалното културно наследство. Съзнаваме, че немалко заплахи застрашават световното наследство и цялото му многообразие, което налага участието на международната общност в неговото опазване, управление и популяризиране. Наред с културното многообразие, което насърчава свободния обмен на идеи между култури, ние считаме културното наследство за мощен инструмент за икономически растеж и за развитие на творческата икономика, цифровата среда и работните места на утрешния ден. Живеем в момент, в който сме на прага на качествено различно бъдеще, което изисква от обществата ни изключителна зрялост и мъдрост. Визирам развитието на изкуствения интелект и негативните климатични промени, неговите постижения в областта на невротехнологиите и на технологичното развитие като цяло, а действителността ни връща към теми, които мечтаехме да оставим в миналото. България би искала да допринесе за развитието на дебата и инициативите в рамките на ЮНЕСКО в тези иновативни области на сътрудничество. Предизвикателствата, свързани с навлизането във всички сфери на изкуствения интелект, поставя пред организацията нови задачи. България подкрепя стартирането на процедура по изработване на нови нормативни актове, свързани с етиката на невротехнологиите, както и изработването на програма за прилагане на препоръка за етиката на изкуствения интелект. България подкрепя основните приоритети на ЮНЕСКО – Африка и равенство между половете и подпомага финансово специфични проекти като обучение по STEM за момичета и жени в Сахарска Африка. По проекта на програмата и бюджет на ЮНЕСКО за периода 2024-2025 година Република България подкрепя предложените от Изпълнителния съвет на ЮНЕСКО допълнения по текстовете, като набляга на необходимостта от целесъобразно използване на бюджета чрез засилване на мултидисциплинарни инициативи, както и дейностите на терен с участието на бюра от различни региони. Бихме оценили евентуалните предложения, насочени към намаляване тежестта на членския внос на отделни държави и недопускане на увеличение бройките на служители на организацията, при положение, че все още има незаети постове. Подобрено административно управление би допринесло за по-добро разпределение на наличните човешки и финансови ресурси. Позволете ми да се спра накратко и на два от основните приоритети на работата на българското правителство в сътрудничеството с ЮНЕСКО. Нашите дългогодишни приоритети на национално ниво в сферата на образованието включва учение през цял живот, зелено образование, развитие на качествено цифрово образование. България вече започва да подобрява своите национални платформи за цифрово обучение, които са безплатни и достъпни за всички образователни нива. Надяваме се да споделим нашите положителни резултати с други заинтересовани държави и партньори. България предвижда да ратифицира Глобалната конвенция на ЮНЕСКО за признаване на квалификациите във висшето образование. Като деятел в културната сфера, позволете ми да споделя твърдото си убеждение, че културата и опазването на културното наследство не бива да бъдат самоцел. Това прави значими за нас регионалните и международното сътрудничество в тази сфера. След повече от 30 години прекъсване, България е член на Комитета на световното наследство на ЮНЕСКО и това членство е изключително важно за нас. Включването на местните общности в управлението на обектите, намирането на баланс между икономическото развитие и опазване на световното наследство, справянето с отрицателното влияние на климатичните промени върху обектите на световното наследство, синергията с други програми и конвенции на ЮНЕСКО – това са нашите приоритети. Република България счита за основен приоритет опазването на традициите и обичаите като вектор на устойчивост. Щастливи сме, че днес ще се поднови споразумението между България и ЮНЕСКО за регионалния център за нематериално наследство в Югоизточна Европа, което е най-ясното доказателство за важността, която отдаваме на регионалното сътрудничество и опазването на нематериалното наследство като основи за изграждането на стабилни връзки между държавите отвъд политическото противопоставяне. За България би било чест да продължи да опита и да развие задълбоченото сътрудничество за подводното културно наследство чрез нов регионален център, който ще работи и по съвместни проекти с Конвенцията за световното наследство и практически насърчава синергията между тези две конвенции. Бих искал да завърша с това, че България неотклонно ще се стреми да постигне консенсус по ключови въпроси на вашето съвремие, на работите и работи активно за превръщане в реалност на ценностите, в които вярваме. Свобода, човешко достоинство, равни права за всички, право на качествено образование, на свободен достъп до информация, на културна идентичност и на свобода на изразяване. Благодаря ви.
Благодаря. I'm honored now to give the floor to His Excellency Masahito Moriyama, Minister of Education, Culture, Sports, Science and Technology of Japan.
Thank you, Madam President, Madam Director General of UNESCO, distinguished delegations in the member states. Madam President, today the international community faces an array of serious challenges, such as humanitarian crisis and the destruction of cultural heritage caused by war and conflict, including Russia's aggression against Ukraine and the Israeli-Palestinian situation, as well as the intensification and frequency of natural disasters caused by climate change. In these turbulent times, we believe that UNESCO is one of the leading UN agencies that can offer the people of the world hope for the future. Madam President, Japan welcomes the United States' return to UNESCO and highly values Director General Azuli's leadership. As a UN agency, UNESCO, having earned true universality and full legitimacy, will be called upon to play an even more vital role in this age of division. We look forward to making the most of this momentum and achieving positive results at this General Conference. Madam President, Japan has been vigorously promoting ESD, considered to be one of the main catalysts for the realization of all the targets of the SDGs. In December this year, Japan holds the first ESD-NET 2030 global meeting in Tokyo, together with UNESCO, to share the achievements of ESD to date and spur momentum for further spreading ESD worldwide. Madam President, Japan also contributes to facilitating the global mobility of students in higher education in line with the Global Convention on the Recognition of Qualifications concerning higher education, which entered into force this year. In April, the Japanese government announced an initiative to enhance international student exchanges and set a challenging target of sending 500,000 Japanese students to study abroad and receiving 400,000 international students to study in Japan each year by 2033, in collaboration with other states parties of the convention. Japan will also promote discussions and contribute to the implementations of the convention. Furthermore, in regard to the revision of the 1974 recommendation, Japan supports the dissemination of the revised recommendations, principles, and contents, reflecting the various challenges in the situation surrounding education. Madam President, in the field of science, I strongly support UNESCO's efforts to enhance its expertise to build resilient societies and achieve the SDGs by addressing global challenges such as climate change, biodiversity, water and ocean management, and disaster prevention and mitigation. In particular, we believe that the role of ocean science is crucial. We welcome the strengthening of the IOC's budget and staffing for the next 2 years. We strongly support the leadership of IOC Chair Professor Michida through the dispatch of experts and project support using the funds in trust, and actively contribute to resolving ocean-related issues. Japan will also actively contribute to the upcoming discussion regarding the development of the recommendation on the ethics of neurotechnology. Madam President, Japan has been playing a leading role in disseminating and implementing the World Heritage Convention and the Convention for the Safeguarding of the Intangible Cultural Heritage, this year marking the 20th anniversary of its adoption. In addition, the recent international conferences under the leadership of UNESCO have led to a common recognition worldwide that culture is a public good of the international community. We will continue to cooperate and collaborate with the international community to ensure that culture can contribute to the realization of a sustainable society. Regarding the Memory of the World program, we highly applaud the Secretariat for resuming the biennial nomination cycles in 2021 with revisions to the nomination system. We expect the program to be steadily managed according to the revised scheme. Madam President, now we are standing at a historical turning point. I believe that we should return to UNESCO's objective to contribute to peace and security by promoting collaboration among the nations through education, science, and culture in order to further universal respect for justice, for the rule of law, and for the humanitarian rights and fundamental freedoms. I promise you that Japan will play an active and leading role in discussions in every field and further efforts to promote friendship and mutual understanding among member states. As for the Israeli-Palestinian situation, the situation on the ground is highly unpredictable, and Japan has been paying close attention to the situation with deep concern. Japan extends its sincere condolences to the families of all the victims and for the loss of UN staff and personnel. Improving humanitarian situation, especially in the Gaza Strip, is now on the top priority. We believe that when circumstances permit, the UNESCO should engage in a variety of support activities within the scope of its mandate. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. May I now invite to the floor His Excellency Mr. Jimmy Uguro, Minister of Education of Papua New Guinea.
Madam President, Madam Director General, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. I am honored to be here again to continue underscore, as many who have spoken before me, the importance of education as a key driver to achieving the overall 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. At the outset, allow me to thank the outgoing President of the 41st session and also congratulate you, the incoming President, on your assumption to this role, not only as President of the 42nd session, but the 5th female President in the history of organization. Madam President, since joining UNESCO in 1976, Papua New Guinea continues to uphold the overall mission of the organization. In reaffirming this commitment, Pillar 2 of the Papua New Guinea Vision 2050 recognizes the healthy, educated, and skilled population as the catalyst for economic growth and development in the country. This was further strengthened in 50-year Education Transformation Vision 2025 to 2075 that my government has recently approved. This strategic plan seeks to work towards providing a roadmap to improve and upscale all areas of existing curriculum, teaching, learning, literacy, as well as the education infrastructure. Madam President, Papua New Guinea, the largest Pacific island country in the Pacific, has a landmass spanning over 400,000 square kilometers, a population of over 10 million, and more than 800 different languages, making it one of the world's linguistically diverse countries. From deep, rugged mountains to the low-lying coastal villages and scattered islands across access to quality education, teaching, and basic resources remains a greater challenge. Communication, transportation, and lack of technology also adds to these challenges. Papua New Guinea's education system has undergone many changes for a rapid structure and outcome-based education curriculum to a standard-based education program, which also focused on teacher education standards. Investing in teachers is investing in learning, and they play a pivotal role in achieving SDG number 4. Madam President, Papua New Guinea is keen on fostering partnership in programs. We are also committed to increasing efforts in providing safe learning environments, enabling digital technology, or technical vocational education and training, TVET program, together with STEM education. This year, the government has again declared a 100% tuition fee-free policy for all students in elementary schools up to secondary and vocational institutions. This free education policy aims to ensure that all children must complete basic education, life skills to sustainably support them in the future. Though the flexible and open learning distance education of FORWARD, my government has also given second chance for education opportunities of 50,000 young people in the last 2 years, with the aim to leave no child behind. Madam President, Papua New Guinea welcomes the decision by UNESCO to establish a country's office is committed to ensuring to complete set up the office. Given the size as well as the challenges, the expertise of UNESCO can assist us in transforming our education system as well as other collective goals of UNESCO. Papua New Guinea also recognizes research, science, and technology as an integral and critical part of innovation and progress. These tools are essential to foster economic, social, and environmental growth. We also support artificial intelligence, AI, innovation in the education and development. However, we echo the call for UNESCO's urgent rectification of ethical standards in AI, as we are already experiencing abuse of AI platforms against women and girls. Madam President, at this juncture, I commend UNESCO for a small island developed nations SID strategy. We continue to be confronted by multi challenges that are increasingly complex and cross-cutting, such as climate change, ocean population, pollution and acidification, biodiversity loss, and including the post-pandemic recovery of COVID-19, to name a few. A strategy that is specific to our needs is therefore welcomed, and we call on member states to endorse and support the operationalization of the strategy. Madam President, in closing, whilst we work towards achieving those common goals, let us be reminded of the significance of the solidarity, unity, and peace through partnership and cooperation to harness our collective and transformative responses to address our common goals, common global agenda. Thank you, Barahera. Thank you, Tomas. Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. May I now invite to the floor His Excellency Mr. Joel Kamoko, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Education of Zambia.
Madam President of the General Conference, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's with pleasure that I'm delivering the statement on behalf of the Government of the Republic of Zambia to the 2023 UNESCO General Conference and to reaffirm Zambia's commitment to the work of UNESCO. Madam President, let me join the earlier speakers in congratulating you on your election as President of the General Conference. I wish to commend the Director General on our positive efforts towards building a stronger and more visible UNESCO. The COVID-19 pandemic has shown the need for education systems globally to establish resilient delivery systems for teaching and learning. To this effect, government is finalizing the ICT policy in education to enhance quality teaching and learning, as well as effective management of the education system. Despite making steady strides in digital transformation in education, Zambia continues to face challenges. Therefore, we seek your indulgence, support, and collaboration linkages in this area. Madam President, Zambia is undertaking curriculum reforms in light of the Transforming Education Summit call for action. The state is thankful to the UNESCO International Bureau of Education, IBE, for supporting a comprehensive approach in capacity building of education officers for a meaningful, comprehensive curriculum reform. Zambia has made education from pre-primary to secondary levels free. As a result, over 2 million learners have enrolled in school since 2023. Zambia has further established a UNESCO Chair for Mathematics, Science and Technology Teacher Education for Sustainable Development at the Copperbelt University. The member states wishes to thank UNESCO for support towards the actualization of this UNESCO Chair. Madam President, the country has commenced the development of national occupational standards in the key priority sectors of the review of national qualifications framework to ensure international comparability and recognition of Zambian qualifications. Zambia's involvement in the issuance of UNESCO qualification passports has deepened the country's continued work with UNESCO in creating opportunities for refugees and displaced persons. I am happy to report that Zambia has facilitated the issuance of 44 UNESCO qualification passports to deserving refugees so far. 30 have been admitted to local universities, one to Brescia University in Italy, in an effort to promote equal opportunities for all learners, including the vulnerable and marginalized groups. Accordingly, I wish to appeal for a sustained flow of scholarships or finances to higher education in Zambia to enable the government to support deserving refugees in higher education. Excellencies, my excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, UNESCO designated the first ever biosphere reserve in Zambia, known as the Kafue Flats Biosphere Reserve, and we appreciate. Zambia therefore requests support from other member states and partners with experience and resources to help position the ICESCO as a regional hub for SDG 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities, SDG 13, Climate Action, SDG 14, Life Below Water, and SDG 15, Life on Land. Madam President, Zambia has positioned science, technology, and innovation as a critical driver to realize 2030 vision. In this regard, measures are being put in place to strengthen the legal and policy framework that advance international cooperation in STIs and supports continuous advancements in technology development. The country has established a Science, Technology, Innovation Youth Fund aimed at assisting Zambian youths to develop scientific and technological innovations, with focus on innovations that are relevant to the creation of wealth and employment. Further, the country has undertaken national innovation systems to foster low-carbon, climate-resilient economic development with technical assistance from the Climate Technology Center and Network. Madam President, Zambia would like to thank UNESCO for the support of anti-doping in support program and the review of national youth policy. Madam President, a combination of local resource and UNESCO support have been instrumental in building capacity for the cultural sector, particularly in safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage. To this effect, Zambia is reviewing policy relating to arts, film, museum, and heritage to ensure that creative industries are mainstreamed into socio-economic sustainable development to harness the collective benefits for society. Madam President, the 2005 Convention on the Protection and Promotion of Diversity of Cultural Expressions entered into force with respect of Zambia on 11th October 2023. Therefore, the member states seek support for capacity building to actualize the important convention fully. I thank you for listening. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you so much, Mr. Minister. And now I give the floor to Her Excellency, Ms. Selina Kuruleka, Permanent Secretary for Education of Fiji.
Madam President of the General Conference, Director General for UNESCO, Excellencies, National Commissions, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, Nisa Mbula Vinaka, and a very warm Fijian greeting to you all from our Honorable Prime Minister, the Honorable Minister for Education, our Fijian delegation, and the people of Fiji. It gives me great pleasure to be present here at this 42nd session of the UNESCO General Conference, representing the National Commission of Fiji, after assuming the office of Permanent Secretary for Education and in my new role in the Fiji National Commission. After a few months in office, I am certainly aware of the challenges that surround the education system in Fiji and the mammoth effort that is needed to lift the standard and quality of education in Fiji. The challenge to deliver on any promise on education is enormous, but we know that education is important if we want lasting peace, poverty eradication, and security in the world today. Let me acknowledge the work of UNESCO in building a culture of peace, supporting the eradication of poverty, sustainable development, and intercultural dialogue through education. The pursuit of education is a lifelong quest of learning, challenging the frontiers of knowledge and innovation, and adapting to the changing landscape and environment for learning and education. Fiji remains committed to the ideals of the UNESCO mandate, and this is reflected in the Ministries of Education's national commitments with other government departments and development partners in Fiji, which have education and development as part of their core mandates. Fiji hosted the 9th consultation of the Pacific National Commission of UNESCO in Suva on the 5th and 6th of September this year to discuss the operational involvement of the national commissions and national networks in addressing the SID's specific challenges as highlighted in the report of the 41st session of the General Conference. The consultation provided a platform for national commissions to discuss UNESCO's program of work in preparation for this session of the General Conference, to examine our shared views and collective voice on UNESCO's operational strategies for small island developing states, the sustainability of UNESCO's field network, UNESCO's fellowships and participation programs, as well as major actions and priority activities within UNESCO's mandates in the field of education, culture, sciences, communications, and information. The consultation acknowledged that there are many competing priorities for the Pacific, but right at the top of the agenda is the impact of climate change. We, the Pacific, are custodians of 1/3 of the oceans and planets, which we protect and defend as a world heritage. UNESCO and all UN agencies with their specific mandates can play a critical role in assisting us mitigate the effects of climate change. We commend the Director General's leadership of the organization in such difficult times. The breadth and depth of issues in front of the 42nd session of the General Conference for our deliberations reflect her commitment and that of the organization in charting a new direction to address the multiple issues confronting us today. We thank the DG for convening the consultation for the Pacific National Commissions in the lead up to this General Conference. Whilst we may not be able to attend and contribute to all of the work of the Commission in this session, let me highlight a few key items relevant to my delegation. We acknowledge the work of the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO in Suva on tsunami preparedness. While climate change is contributing to the increased frequency and intensity of weather-related events in our part of the world, we must also pay special attention to geological-related hazards like earthquakes and tsunamis. The work of the IOC with other partners in the education sector is an important component of building national resilience towards natural and geological-related hazards and climate change in our schools. This work of the IOC contributes to the rollout of the UN Secretary General's Early Warnings for All initiative, to be piloted in 30 countries globally and 6 countries, including Fiji, Kiribati, Maldives, Samoa, Solomon Islands, and Tonga, as part of the Small Island Developing States. Let us work together to ensure that every country in the world has early warning systems that will ensure that we are better prepared to address the impacts of natural and geological related hazards. We extend our unwavering support for UNESCO's work on the operational strategy for small island developing states and the development of accelerators to support resilience building and respond to national challenges in SIDS. Given the existing vulnerabilities of SIDS, the need for advanced action on climate and environmental action through education for sustainable development and resilient societies remain one of our key priorities. The joint UN programming in the Pacific and UN country frameworks provide opportunities for the UN to deliver as one. We support UNESCO's work on enhancing the sustainability of its fieldwork. This new reform is in the best interest of the organization and must be in consultation with its member states. In these challenging times, we must build partnerships with other international organizations and developing partners in mobilizing resources and partnering in joint initiatives towards education. We reiterate the importance of resolve in addressing reform issues, and we invite UNESCO to genuinely dialogue with the Pacific in order to address issues for the Pacific, by us and for us. The Pacific is united and supports the view of Samoa on the sustainability of UNESCO field reform. At the 52nd PIF leaders meeting this past week in Rarotonga, our Pacific leaders noted the increasing global and geostrategic issues that impact the region and remains resilient and optimistic about their forward-working economic and development prospects, and will endeavor to manage issues that arise in a manner that maintains the solidarity of the region and continues to respect the sovereignty of every forum member. Additionally, I want to highlight and promote the intention of our Fijian Prime Minister, and that is promoting our Pacific as a zone of peace. The Ministry of Education remains committed to the work of UNESCO committees, but talk with us and for us. To conclude, I wish to remind us all of the sacrifices of all of our peoples that have gone before us. Today, this Remembrance Day, let us honor their legacy and honor each other. Let us personify the ideals of UNESCO by being beacons of hope, kindness, compassion, peace, and prosperity in this ever-changing world. Thank you very much. Vinakava lebu mercy.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I invite now to the floor His Excellency Mr. Isikeli Oko, Chief Executive Officer for Education and Training of Tonga.
Madam President, Your Excellency Simona Mirela Michalescu, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I bid you a warm malo lelei from the Kingdom of Tonga. On behalf of the government of the Kingdom of Tonga, I congratulate you, Madam President, on your election to the presidency of the 42nd session of the General Conference, and assure you that you have the full support of my country under your eminent leadership. Madam President, the family of UNESCO is more relevant than ever today as we collectively continue to find transformative solutions through multilateral systems for national and global peace. Wars and armed conflicts impact us in every way, threatening our economic and social development towards the 2030 agenda. Allow me to kindly thank UNESCO for recognizing the small islands development states, the SIDS, as a priority group. In August this year, Tonga hosted a preparatory meeting in the Pacific region to prepare them for the 4th International Conference of SIDS to be convened in 2024. We are grateful to UNESCO Office for the Pacific States for its supportive role in monitoring Samoa pathway in the Pacific SIDS. Tonga strongly supports the work of UNESCO Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, the IOC, and its relationship and its leadership in coordinating the United Nations Decade of Ocean Science and Sustainable Development 2021-2030. Tonga is the 3rd most vulnerable country in the world for climate change and related disasters. For Tonga, the manifold impacts for ever accelerating climate change are our greatest existential security threat today. This is the key threat that limits our development opportunities. It is a reality we face every day, not a choice, but a necessity. This directs us to adjust and reshape our views on development. Sustainable development for us is building our resiliency. On the 15th of January last year, Tonga suffered severely from the massive, unprecedented volcanic eruption, followed by a tsunami. We seek UNESCO's assistance through IOC to continue mobilizing international cooperation in marine sciences to improve the management of our oceans, coasts, marine resources, and any research that is to be undertaken. We are proud to say that we have developed the Ocean Management Plan. In the Cook Islands this week, our Pacific leaders were meeting to discuss the implementation plan of the 2050 strategy, the Blue Pacific continent. We are also grateful to UNESCO for its work with the International Telecommunication Union, the ITU, on Broadband Commission for Sustainable Development. Madam President, Tonga applauds UNESCO for being the lead agency in education and steering our ship to harbour SDG 4 through many challenges and opportunities. Tonga has benefited from UNESCO normative standing instruments in education in all levels. We have taken on board through our current curriculum review the resiliency and climate change, green education, inclusiveness, alternative pathways, Tibet, education for peace, cultural heritage, and so forth. The Tonga government established a national university in January this year, increasing the access to affordable higher education. We have many dreams of education, but constrained by the limited available resources we have. We thank our many partners in education for their continuous support. Through the Commonwealth on protection of the world cultural and natural heritage, our culture division of the Ministry of Tourism is able to tap into fundings to assist them implement our plans to protect us and safeguard Tonga's unique culture and heritage for our future generations. We are exploring the opportunity to sign the conventions of the cultural expressions and underwater cultural heritage. We will continue to recognize and support the culture as we drive of development. In conclusion, Madam President, the work of Tonga and the Pacific cannot be fully achieved without a fully staffed UNESCO Office for Pacific States and adequate resources. Tonga also kindly requests UNESCO for adequate attention and resources in the new C5 to be appropriate Pacific Office, following a meaningful and genuine consultation in order to fully coordinate and mobilize its 17 Pacific member states to improve the visibility and delivery of UNESCO in these member states. Malo aupito, ovatu.
Thank you very much. May I invite now His Excellency Mr. Olivier Ranaevomanana, Chargé d'Affaires of Madagascar to UNESCO.
Madame la Présidente de la Conférence Générale, Madame la Présidente du Conseil Exécutif, Madame la Directrice Générale, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, à l'entame de mon intervention, permettez-moi tout d'abord d'adresser mes vives félicitations à l'endroit de Son Excellence Madame l'Ambassadeur déléguée permanente de la Roumanie auprès de l'UNESCO pour sa brillante élection à la présidence de la 42e session de la Conférence Générale de l'UNESCO. Madame la Présidente, votre dynamisme avéré constitue un atout majeur pour le succès de nos travaux. Soyez assurés du plein soutien de la délégation de Madagascar à l'endroit de nos réunions. Par la même occasion, je souhaite rendre un hommage mérité à votre prédécesseur pour sa contribution et le travail qu'il a habilement accompli au cours de son mandat. Madame la Présidente, s'il est vrai que les défis ont toujours été présents dans le paysage historique de l'humanité, la magnitude des enjeux auxquels fait face le monde actuellement conforte le plaidoyer universel en faveur de sociétés plus équitables et inclusives. Nul besoin ainsi de réaffirmer la pertinence du sommet pour la transformation de l'éducation tenu l'année dernière à New York, lequel a permis d'élever l'éducation au rang de priorité politique mondiale et semer les graines d'une réflexion mondiale à laquelle Madagascar a fait écho par le biais de sa déclaration nationale d'engagement pour la transformation de l'éducation. Ceci décliné en un programme de réforme novatrice impliquant entre autres d'investir dans un programme d'études revisité, de nouvelles approches et méthodes d'enseignement, notamment au niveau des premiers apprentissages, une meilleure préparation à l'apprentissage par l'universalisation d'un préscolaire de 1 an, une meilleure préparation des enseignants et de ressources et infrastructures d'apprentissage favorables. Il convient de mentionner qu'à ce jour, près de 33 000 enseignants ont été formés sur les premiers apprentissages. Il s'agit de lecture, écriture et calcul, et 4 168 salles de classe aux normes résilientes dans 800 établissements scolaires, ainsi que 12 nouvelles universités construites. Dans cette veine, l'adoption de la loi d'orientation générale du système éducatif dénommée LOSEM constitue un tournant décisif pour l'éducation à Madagascar. La loi comprend des réformes curriculaires qui touchent tous les sous-secteurs de l'éducation et de la formation, depuis le préscolaire jusqu'à la formation technique et professionnelle, à l'instar de la mise en place d'une éducation fondamentale de 9 ans gratuite et obligatoire, structurée en sous-cycle et d'une amélioration de l'accessibilité de tous aux dispositifs d'enseignement technique et de formation professionnelle en adéquation au marché de l'emploi, ainsi que la reconnaissance des compétences par le biais de la validation des acquis de l'expérience sous le leadership du ministère en charge de l'enseignement technique et de la formation professionnelle. Dans cette audacieuse entreprise, Madagascar se réjouit de pouvoir compter sur l'UNESCO. Le personnel administratif du ministère a par ailleurs bénéficié entre autres de l'appui de l'IPE UNESCO dans le cadre du programme d'appui à la planification de l'éducation sur le système d'information à Madagascar, PAPESI. Madame la Présidente, l'UNESCO, c'est aussi le gardien de la mémoire de l'humanité. Depuis plus d'un demi-siècle, l'UNESCO s'évertue à mobiliser l'action, l'ambition, la solidarité et les solutions pour relier les hommes à leur histoire et leur territoire et promouvoir la diversité de cultures. Le patrimoine culturel est porteur d'identité, témoin vivant de notre histoire, héritage universel d'un monde fragile en constante mutation. Madagascar se réjouit aussi de l'engagement de l'UNESCO en faveur d'une plus grande visibilité du continent africain et se félicite de l'extension du site des forêts sèches de l'ouest de l'Andjéven à 4 parcs nationaux et 2 réserves spéciales approuvées très récemment par la dernière session du Comité du patrimoine mondial en septembre. Un nouveau dossier de nomination lui emboîte déjà le pas, en l'occurrence celui du site de la mission catholique d'Ambudfoutage à Sainte-Marie. Vous l'aurez compris, Madagascar accorde une importance particulière au patrimoine mondial et c'est dans cet esprit d'engagement que Madagascar se porte candidat au Comité du patrimoine mondial pour le mandat 2025-2029, tout en ayant l'espoir de recueillir le soutien de la grande famille de l'UNESCO. Madame la Présidente, Mesdames et Messieurs, l'Afrique en général et Madagascar en particulier appellent à un effort soutenu et accru de la part de l'UNESCO dans le domaine du développement durable, lequel ne peut faire fi d'une science au service de l'humain pour une croissance partagée. Mais parler de développement durable revient également à soulever la question de la conservation des ressources naturelles. Face au poids du changement climatique, Madagascar se réjouit du projet conservation de la biodiversité et gestion durable des ressources naturelles pour le développement communautaire intégré dans les parcs nationaux de Madagascar ou Biocom, mis en œuvre avec le précieux financement du fonds en dépôt UNESCO-Corée et qui a permis la restauration durable des zones protégées, le maintien de la diversité biologique et la réduction de la pression anthropique sur les parcs. En outre, sensible aux questions hydrographiques et persuadé que l'eau, ressource naturelle essentielle à la vie, vient à manquer sur une planète que l'on connaît bleue, Madagascar s'est mobilisé pour la redynamisation du Comité national du PHI et pour la mise en place du Comité national de décennie des Nations unies pour les sciences océaniques. Madagascar œuvre activement pour une meilleure gestion hydrique à travers l'installation de stations de mesure de ressources en eau et forme le vœu qu'il puisse trouver un appui auprès de notre organisation en faveur d'un déploiement actuel à l'échelle nationale de ce programme. Je ne saurais clore mes propos sans mettre en relief l'attachement de Madagascar à l'intelligence artificielle, une révolution qui constitue simultanément un défi et une opportunité de développement. À Madagascar, les initiatives nationales en faveur de la réduction de la fracture numérique sont en cours, si je ne cite que la mise en place de bornes Internet dans les lieux publics stratégiques. Mais parallèlement à cet essor du numérique, la lutte contre la désinformation s'avère tout autant primordiale lorsqu'on sait que l'information contemporaine transite par les médias et les réseaux sociaux. Dans cette optique, Madagascar souhaite réaffirmer l'importance d'un cadre de régulation des plateformes numériques afin de garantir l'information en tant que bien public, tout en protégeant la liberté d'expression et les autres droits de l'homme. Je vous remercie.
Moi aussi, merci beaucoup. I have the pleasure to invite to the floor now Her Excellency Ms. Nela Tavita-Levi, Ambassador Permanent Delegate of Samoa to UNESCO.
Madam President of the General Conference, Director General of UNESCO, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I greet you all in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Talofa lava, another warm Pacific greeting to you all. Congratulations on your appointment, Madam President, to steer and lead our work, and rest assured of Samoa's support for you. It is an honor to address the General Conference, to register the voice of Samoa in the work of UNESCO, and to share with you our journey of progress, share the burden of the challenges that we face, the road ahead, and how UNESCO can intervene meaningfully. Samoa is confident that as a small island developing state, we have to stand up and be counted when we need to do so. For SIDS, our smallness and absence of economic or military influence should not deter us from international engagement. Rather, we should stand with our partners and share our particular circumstances to mold and influence the development of international policies. The impacts of global crises on small island developing states threaten their very existence. Climate change remains the Pacific region's single greatest security threat. Samoa was one of the first countries in the world to close its international airports in March 2020, a measure taken to keep the COVID-19 virus from reaching our shores. Our inherent challenges as SIDS limit our ability to respond to these crises. As such, we cannot and should not be left to deal with these events on our own. Madam President, COVID-19 revealed underlying conditions that required attention. When schools closed, we saw the big gaps in access to ICT resources for schools, educational tools, and at home. We're pleased that we have made progress
and we call upon our partners, including UNESCO and other UN agencies, to support our efforts to promote and deliver a safe digital learning space for teachers and students. But UNESCO cannot do it alone, we recognize. International organizations need to work together in full and genuine consultation with member states to develop solutions that respond to the specificities of the regions, countries, and people, particularly those most vulnerable. Samoa continues to provide free primary and secondary education, building on an inclusive education system for children with disabilities and improving access to early childhood education. We have heard in the last few days member states and their respective plans and aspirations to provide quality education for their citizens. Samoa is no different, aspiring to ensure that education policies address social and welfare issues for Samoans with the intention of establishing a knowledgeable economy. Priorities include inclusive education, early childhood education, technical and vocational education and training, information and communication technology, and of course, capacity development for teachers and education personnel. We commend the UNESCO work, including the SIDS operational strategy and the resources allocated for implementation. We thank that members recognize the peculiar circumstances of small island developing states requiring specific and targeted interventions that respond to our unique vulnerabilities. For the 14 Pacific Island member states of UNESCO, none of us are resident delegations in Paris. Samoa is here today, along with our Blue Pacific family, to speak and remind the membership, hello, we do exist. We encourage the secretariats to engage in genuine, interactive consultations with the Pacific. The Prime Minister of Samoa, the Honorable Fiame Naomi Mataafa, has written to the General Conference, Madam President, that the UNESCO Pacific Regional Multi-Sectoral Office remains in Samoa. Our Pacific leaders, as you have heard this morning, convened in the Cook Islands for the 52nd Pacific Islands Forum Leaders Meeting. The theme of their gathering is Our Voices, Our Choices, Our Pacific Way, Promote, Partner, Prosper, a fitting message and encouragement for UNESCO and our partners to hear the Pacific voices and ensure partnerships for prosperity in the context of the Pacific Way.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Thank you. Et maintenant, nous allons donner la parole aux organisations intergouvernementales et non gouvernementales pour leurs interventions dans cette 42e session de la Conférence générale. Je rappelle que le temps de parole sera de 3 minutes. So let me invite to the floor His Excellency Mr. Abdul Rahman Al-Asmi, Director General of the Arab Bureau of Education for the Gulf States. You have the floor.
معالي رئيس المؤتمر العام، معالي رئيس المجلس التنفيذي، معالي المدير العام لليونسكو، أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، السلام عليكم. ففي البدء يسعدني ويطيب لي أن أحيي جمعكم الكريم هذا أطيب تحية، وأن أتقدم لكم بوافر الشكر والتقدير وعظيم الامتنان على دعوتنا لاجتماعات المؤتمر العام، مشيدين بجهود المجتمع الدولي المتصلة وسعيه الجاد لجعل التعليم قاسما مشتركا بين البشر جميعا دون تفرقة أو تمييز، وعاملا مهما في توحيد الجهود لمواجهة تحديات العصر المستمرة والمتمثلة في الحروب والنزاعات والأوبئة الفتاكة والكوارث الطبيعية. كما يسعدني أن أنقل لكم أصحاب المعالي والسعادة تحيات إخوانكم التربويين والعاملين في الحقل التربوي في دول الخليج العربية التي تشهد قفزات نوعية متسارعة في مجالات التعليم المختلفة وفي حقول الثقافة وفنونها، وأفيد جمعكم الكريم أنهم يتقاسمون معكم الآمال والطموحات في تجاوز التحديات والعقبات التي تعترض مسار التعليم والمعرفة. أيها الحضور، يأتي هذا المؤتمر بعد قمة تحويل التعليم التي انعقدت استجابة للأزمة العالمية في التعليم، وهي أزمة تتعلق بالمساواة والشمول والملائمة والجودة. ويسعدني من هذا المقام القول والتأكيد أن مكتب التربية العربي لدول الخليج قد عمل بجد منذ أن تم اختيار المكتب عضواً في لجنة تيسير الهدف الرابع من أهداف التنمية المستدامة للأمم المتحدة، وعضواً في لجنة تسيير الفريق الدولي المعني بالمعلمين، وعضواً في الهيئة الاستشارية للتقرير العالمي لرصد التعليم. وبناء على هذا الاختيار فقد تشرف المكتب بالمساهمة والإعداد للاجتماعات الممهدة للقمة، كما شارك في الاجتماعات الوزارية وأسهم بتقديم ورش عمل مصاحبة، وقدم دعماً للدول الأعضاء والدول العربية في مجال تحول التعليم. أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، متابعة لنتائج قمة تحول التعليم واستيعاباً لمخرجاتها، فقد نظم المكتب اجتماعاً دولياً بحضور مستشار الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة لشؤون التعليم و20 منظمة دولية وإقليمية للوقوف على أدوارها في دعم مسارات العمل الخمسة. كما قام مكتب التربية بالتعاون مع المعهد الدولي للتعلم مدى الحياة على تكوين شبكة إقليمية لمدن التعلم العربية، وذلك دعماً لمسار التعليم مدى الحياة. وقبيل انعقاد هذا المؤتمر نظم المكتب مع الشركاء الاستراتيجيين الاجتماع الإقليمي الخامس لمجموعة الدعم العربية للتعليم 2030، كما يعكف على مسودة خارطة العمل لعام 2024، وإعداد وإصدار التقرير الإقليمي الثاني المجمع حول التقدم المحرز في أجندة عمل التعليم ومسارات مبادرات تحول التعليم. إضافة إلى ذلك فقد نظم المكتب فعالية بالتزامن مع أسبوع المناخ لدول الشرق الأوسط وشمال أفريقيا، كما سيقيم ندوة عن التعليم الأخضر في إطار قمة المناخ 28 عن التعليم الأخضر بالتعاون في ذلك مع اليونسكو. وقد تيسر له كل ذلك بفضل من الله تعالى وبما يجده من رعاية واهتمام من أصحاب الجلالة والفخامة والسمو قادة الدول الأعضاء، ومن دعم ومساندة من وزراء التعليم في الدول العربية. أيها الحضور، إن مكتب التربية العربي يؤكد من هذا المقام تكريس مبدأ الشراكة بين الجميع في المعرفة والعمل، ويشيد بشراكته المثمرة والبناءة مع منظمة اليونسكو ومراكزها في المنطقة العربية، ويثمن عاليا سعيه الدؤوب والجاد والمتواصل للنهوض بالمعرفة وتعزيز الحوار الهادف لبناء السلام في عقول البشر. أيها الحضور، أكرر شكري وتقديري لكم، متمنيا أن يخرج مؤتمركم هذا بتوصيات تدفع بمسيرة التعليم والمعرفة وتحقق الآمال المنوطة بهذا المؤتمر. شكرا لكم جميعا، والسلام عليكم.
Thank you very much. I invite now the Counselor for the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, Ms. Salima Dalibey.
Madam President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the world is increasingly fragmented and polarized, and we are witnessing uncertain times. In this sobering context, multilateralism has never been more needed, and the role of UNESCO more relevant to build peace in the minds of men and women. The OIC commends UNESCO's pivotal role in fostering a culture of peace through intercultural dialogue. The promotion of intercultural and interreligious dialogue stands high on OIC's agenda. Intercultural dialogue is a powerful instrument for both inclusion and stability. To implement this view, the OIC has established a Department of Dialogue and Outreach to foster interfaith and intercultural understanding and to prevent violent extremism. Shared cultural heritage is crucial to countries' and communities' social and economic fabric. It is a key driver and enabler for sustainable development. For its part, the OIC reiterates its commitment to participate in the global efforts to safeguard and promote cultural heritage. To that end, the OIC is engaged in the process of establishing a platform for the protection and preservation of cultural heritage in the Islamic world. Education, a cornerstone of human progress, holds a transformative power. It is the smartest investment a country can make. In line with this vision, the OIC deploys a series of initiatives to promote access to education, such as a scholarship program for students from OIC member states. The OIC is also committed in advancing education in complex settings. Hence, the OIC Special Envoy for Afghanistan and Muslim scholars are engaging with the de facto authorities in Afghanistan to advance the rights of women and girls to access education and work. The Global Islamic Fund for Refugees, which has been recently established, will improve refugees' access to education. Science, technology, and innovation play a critical role in addressing life-threatening challenges such as pandemics, food insecurity, and climate change. Aware of the critical need to harness the power of science and technology, the OIC has set a framework through the ICESCO Agenda 2026 to strengthen research and development and promote emerging technologies. Madam President, it has been 1 month since the innocent civilians in Gaza are facing ruthless Israeli attacks. The OIC utterly condemns the crimes against humanity currently committed against the Palestinians, including collective punishment, forcible transfer of population, and targeted attacks on civilians, hospitals, and schools. The deliberate destructions of schools, hospitals, cultural heritage, including religious buildings, by Israel amount to war crimes. The OIC echoes the call by the UN Secretary General, the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and several UN agencies for an immediate ceasefire and unhindered provision of humanitarian assistance. I thank you.
Thank you for sticking to the time. Thank you very much. J'invite maintenant Monsieur Jacques Brulet, au nom de Madame Maha El Khalil Chalabi, secrétaire générale de l'Association internationale pour la sauvegarde de Tyre.
Madame la Présidente, Messieurs les délégués, Mesdames, Messieurs, je suis très honoré de représenter ici Maha Chalabi, qui est effectivement la fondatrice et la présidente de l'Association internationale pour la sauvegarde de Tyre. Cette association qui est d'ailleurs partenaire de l'UNESCO depuis une quarantaine d'années. Alors comme vous le savez, la ville de Tyre au Liban est un des 5 sites du patrimoine mondial de l'UNESCO, mais c'est uniquement un site terrestre, c'est-à-dire que ce sont des constructions, des ruines romaines, des ruines médiévales, une nécropole, un hippodrome, qui sont classés par le site de Tyre. Et notre association estime impératif de renforcer la protection de cette ville de Tyre par ce qui est sous l'eau, ce qui est subaquatique, qu'il soit naturel ou culturel. En effet, des recherches successives ont montré la force et l'importance de ces ruines subaquatiques. D'ailleurs, la Commission du patrimoine mondial UNESCO y a déjà travaillé. Et il est important, effectivement, de protéger absolument ce patrimoine. Alors d'abord, je pense qu'il est majeur que sur ce patrimoine soit renforcée son étude, sa connaissance. Il faut répertorier absolument les fouilles, continuer à les faire et les répertorier pour tout ce patrimoine subaquatique. Avec le même objectif de protection, nous souhaitons que le périmètre de protection de l'UNESCO qui s'adresse à ce qui est terrestre s'adresse également à cette zone sous-marine côtière. Donc d'étendre le site protégé à la zone subaquatique. Deuxièmement, nous pensons qu'il est important d'élargir cette protection au patrimoine naturel. Le patrimoine naturel, beaucoup d'intervenants en ont parlé, c'est absolument majeur pour la protection de l'environnement. Nombreuses espèces animales et végétales qui sont dans cette zone défendent la biodiversité et font une protection de l'environnement dans cette Méditerranée orientale qui est très menacée. De plus, ce patrimoine naturel, pour nous, est un formidable outil d'attractivité pour la jeunesse et pour le grand public. C'est un moyen pour les jeunes de mieux connaître le patrimoine et donc nous défendons cette idée. Et en plus, le patrimoine naturel permet de développer localement des activités économiques importantes. C'est pourquoi nous demandons à ce que le site de Tyre devienne un site mixte de l'UNESCO. Je crois que c'est une chose assez difficile à monter, mais nous souhaitons vivement que l'idée de faire du site de Tyre un site mixte, culturel et naturel, puisse être étudiée et renforcée. Cette proposition s'adresse aussi naturellement à d'autres sites subaquatiques. Je pense à Malaga, je pense à Byblos, je pense à Carthage, je pense à Cadix et d'autres sites en Méditerranée qui ont besoin de cette protection subaquatique. Pour résumer, je dirais que pour nous, notre association, il est important d'abord de renforcer la connaissance de ces sites subaquatiques. Deuxièmement, d'élargir le site actuel de l'UNESCO à la zone sous-marine. Et troisièmement, de faire de ce site de Tyre un site mixte de l'UNESCO. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur. I would like to invite now to the floor Ms. Olga Legatska, Chief Operative Officer of the International Association for Exchange of Students for Technical Experience.
Madam President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, AISTE, the International Association for the Exchange of Students for Technical Experience, was founded in 1948, in the aftermath of World War II, when a new spirit
pervaded the world a desire for international understanding and cooperation. It was this spirit that brought forth both the United Nations and its agencies like UNESCO, as well as organizations dedicated to promoting these objectives like AISTE. Today, youth with international understanding are the key to tackling today's global challenges and implementing the agenda for sustainable development. As a member of the NGO UNESCO Liaison Committee, the AISTE is firmly committed to contributing our expertise to the thematic mapping of the NGOs in partnership with UNESCO and contributing to the organization of NGO forums. International cooperation and exchange are at the core of our work. We deliver our mission by providing students with practical, study-relevant, paid internship experience abroad in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. For every student, it is a life-changing event and a source of cultural enrichment for interns and their host communities. I wish to appeal to all member states to support the objective of providing all students the opportunity to get the international experience through internships. We follow non-discriminatory practices and operate irrespective of ethnicity. Still, our students face challenges with the complex issues of the visa process, especially for students from the African continent, and the lack of regulations related to internships worldwide. We count on your continued consideration and support to remove existing barriers and challenges so as to fully seize the potential of our mission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I invite to the floor Ms. Victoria Bares, a representative of the International Montessori Association to UNESCO.
Dear Madam President of the General Conference of UNESCO, Madam Odeazule, Excellencies, distinguished guests, it is a great honor to address you today in these troubled, turbulent times of chaos, crises that threaten humanity and the natural world. Education, one based truly on a culture of human rights and peace, is needed even more today than in the aftermath of the Second World War when UNESCO was created. The Association Montessori International strongly salutes the adoption of the revised 1974 recommendation on education for peace and human rights, international cooperation, fundamental freedoms, global citizenship, and sustainable development that include the topics also of ethics of artificial intelligence and other significant contemporary issues. It also commends the new extensive consultation process to which AMI contributed, along with many other civil society organizations and experts. In 1907, Montessori discovered the new child, who lays a healthy foundation of his personality much earlier than anyone ever thought, including Montessori herself, with adults who understand the child's most fundamental needs. Help me to do it myself. Increasingly, Montessori education is being introduced in public education in diverse cultures and multi-education programs, and with fragile, isolated communities who gain confidence and a sense of dignity and respect rather than feeling cast aside by society. AMI's strategic plan to expand quality teacher training at all levels, birth to 3, 3 to 6, 6 to 12, adolescent, and parent education, has grown in a geometric progression. Many outreach initiatives serve marginalized children and indigenous communities in Africa, the Americas, and Asia in partnership with other like-minded organizations. Digital learning is available in various formats, including a website with simple, free educational materials in 35 languages. More can be added easily, so I encourage you all to add in your own languages, that have simple images of the natural world and daily life, food, transportation, flags, and more complex issues. They can be used as games at home and in informal, formal, and formal settings. AMI will attend the UNESCO Greening Education events at the COP28 in Dubai late November. It will share examples about greening education in Montessori environments and communities on 2 of the 4 greening education pillars. 10 schools for a nomadic population in Kenya in partnership with a foundation to create a reserve for wild animals. The children and youth gain foundational education skills that will enable them to work as rangers on the natural reserve and elsewhere. Building green communities in Norway is the second example. The Association Montessori wishes to continue its partnership with UNESCO and all the member countries to promote education that will expand a culture of peace and understanding among diverse peoples and cultures. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Barres. I have 2 kind requests to the room. First of all, please stick to the 3 minutes provided. And also, I think that the NGOs deserve the same quiet room as our ministers. So please help me with keeping quiet. Thank you very much. Maintenant, j'invite à prendre la parole Monsieur François Lo Giacomo, membre du conseil d'administration et représentant de l'association universelle d'Esperanto auprès de l'UNESCO.
Madame la Présidente, Excellences, Madame la Directrice Générale, dans votre introduction au présent débat de politique générale, vous avez dit « Il n'est pas aisé de trouver une langue commune que 194 États membres peuvent parler ensemble. » Notre organisation, l'Association universelle d'Espéranto, peut vous y aider. Le 26 juillet 1887, paraissait le premier manuel de la langue internationale du docteur Esperanto, le docteur qui espère. Et malgré tous les obstacles qui se sont dressés devant lui, l'espéranto est aujourd'hui parlé par plusieurs millions de personnes dans plus de 100 pays. Notre association préside le Comité des langues et langages des Nations Unies. Il y a déjà plus de 100 ans, les pays favorables à l'espéranto au sein de la Société des Nations représentaient la moitié de la population mondiale. L'UNESCO nous a plusieurs fois soutenus par des résolutions en 1954 et 1985 et par différents messages, y compris de vous-même, Madame la Directrice Générale. Nous vous en sommes très reconnaissants. Lorsqu'il y a plus de 40 ans, l'éminent espérantiste et traducteur Claude Piron m'a dit que la principale difficulté de compréhension, ce ne sont pas les langues, mais les différences culturelles, j'en ai été tout d'abord surpris. Mais grâce à l'espéranto, c'est devenu une évidence. Il ne suffit pas de parler la même langue pour se comprendre. Toutefois, cette difficulté ne doit pas être un obstacle, car c'est précisément cette diversité culturelle qui fait toute la richesse de notre monde. Chaque différence est une touche de couleur qui s'ajoute à notre mosaïque mondiale. La vie est trop courte pour étudier les 8300 langues que recense notre atlas. Mais si, au lieu de consacrer des dizaines d'heures à peiner sur les verbes irréguliers d'une seule d'entre elles, nous passons très rapidement, grâce à une langue simple et sans exception, à cette seconde étape, le dialogue interculturel, nous faisons un pas significatif vers une meilleure intercompréhension, donc vers la paix. Notre association participe activement à la célébration de la Journée internationale de la paix, mais aussi à la diffusion des communications de l'UNESCO, grâce à la version en espéranto du courrier de l'UNESCO. Notre prochain congrès universel, au pied du Kilimandjaro en Tanzanie, donnera un élan vigoureux à la pratique de l'espéranto sur ce continent en pleine expansion. Et de nombreuses études grâce notamment à la Ligue internationale des enseignants espérantophones qui nous accompagne dans cette conférence générale, prouve que l'apprentissage de l'espéranto facilite l'apprentissage ultérieur des autres langues. Offrons à nos enfants ce puissant outil pour mieux se comprendre. Je vous remercie.
Dankon, Monsieur Lo Giacomo.
Merci beaucoup.
I invite now to the floor Madam Elizabeth O'Casey, Director of Advocacy of Humanists International.
Thank you, Madam President of the General Conference. Madam Director General, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. Humanists International, the global representative body of the humanist movement, was established in 1952. UNESCO's first Director General, Julian Huxley, was a co-founder of the organization. Next Thursday marks International Day for Tolerance, an annual day established by the Declaration of Principles on Tolerance made by UNESCO member states 28 years ago. Despite the long-standing nature of this declaration, across the world we see a proliferation of exclusionary narratives and policies, often based on ethno and religious nationalisms and populism, that are used for promoting intolerance and the othering of minorities and often marginalized groups, including migrants and sexual, racial, and belief minorities. Made up of both of state and non-state actors, the movements advocating these discriminatory positions denigrate people and groups who do not wholly subscribe to or are perceived not to fit the static and homogeneous conceptualizations of cultural and national identity that these actors wish to impose. Hijacked values of family and tradition are championed, and parental rights and national sovereignty are prioritized in the place of international human rights framework, grounded in concepts of equality, dignity, autonomy, and diversity. As part of this, the multilateral institutions which exist to uphold that framework are targeted, their legitimacy questioned and capacity to function undermined and disrupted through defunding and misrepresentation. Indeed, work by UNESCO has been targeted within this context. As a body founded to foster equality, tolerance, science, and education, its promotion of gender equality, reproductive rights, and comprehensive sexuality education, which includes promoting respect for and understanding of people of differing sexual orientations and gender identities, has been the subject of disinformation and smear campaigns by those seeking to undermine progress in human rights standards and evidence-based education. When UNESCO member states made the Declaration of Principles on Tolerance, they recognized education as the most effective means of preventing intolerance, stating that it should counter influences that lead to fear and exclusion and help develop capacities for independent judgment, critical thinking, and ethical reasoning. They conceived tolerance as a rejection of dogmatism and absolutism and instead grounded in international human rights framework. Madam President, ahead of the Day for International Tolerance, we urge UNESCO member states to reaffirm their commitment to these principles laid out in the Declaration, both by giving active support to UNESCO and its education work for fostering equality and non-discrimination, and by rejecting exclusionary narratives which weaponize fear, instill division, and work in diametric opposition to the dignity and equality upon which the human rights framework belonging to us all is built. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Je voudrais inviter maintenant Madame Basma Louis Gandhi, présidente internationale de la jeunesse ouvrière chrétienne internationale.
Madam President, thank you very much for giving us the floor. In the IYCW, we agree with the Director General that the intensification of disinformation and hate speech on the internet is a serious threat to stability and social cohesion. It is clear that traditional media have lost all its credibility when it comes to informing and transmitting the reality. And platforms like social media have been used to manipulate the fact and the real situation of young workers. And this affects the critical way of thinking of young people to address their social, political, and economic situation of their country. We see social media have become space for unchecked information. Fake news and historical revisionism have flooded social media. They are promoted by those who profit from falsification of the history. We see a clear white supremacy and racism when dealing with different conflict in our world today, which is impacting our mentality and sense of safety and our view of humanity while questioning our future. Spreading false news, misinformation, and malicious accusation against defender of labor and human rights is affecting our democratic way of life. Meanwhile, young people today look to social media, that uncontrolled alternative, which will have serious consequences in the future. We also see that social media created more inequalities, such as those by age, gender, nationality, and geographical origin. And the inability of government and different public institutions to provide alternative platforms that offer training and education to make sure that young people are aware not only of their reality but also of others in order for us to create a generation with critical thinking. In 2025, the IYCW will celebrate its 100th year of existence, its 100th year of providing spaces for training, education for young people around the world, as the mission of education is our main task. We focus on making young workers aware of their reality, their work, and their human rights. Last but not least, we believe that the UNESCO contribution to peace building through international cooperation in education and guidance is immeasurable through joint work with social organizations. So let's continue on the same path in order for us to build a peaceful future for the new generation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. J'invite maintenant Madame Bérangère Saveliev, représentante de Pax Christi International.
Madame la Présidente de la Conférence Générale, Madame la Directrice, Excellences et représentants des délégations, Mesdames et Messieurs. Face à une conjoncture internationale marquée par la crise écologique et de nombreuses guerres qui sévissent en Ukraine, dans le Caucase, au Proche-Orient et en Afrique, le mouvement Pax Christi International souhaite encourager par tous les moyens possibles, politiques, éducatifs, sociaux et ecclésiaux, à oser une communion des peuples, seule garante d'une paix durable et porteuse d'avenir pour les générations futures. Nous partageons avec l'UNESCO un désir commun de fraternité pour le monde et nous estimons essentiel de garder audible la voix de la paix qui, chaque jour, au même titre que les plus pauvres, est bafouée, violentée et méprisée dans de nombreuses parties du monde. Nous soutenons l'idée que l'éducation, la culture et la science sont vectrices de paix en ce qu'elles aident par leur complémentarité à construire la paix dans le cœur des hommes en élevant l'intelligence par la raison. L'UNESCO reste pleinement engagée pour faire de l'avènement d'une culture de paix un enjeu primordial pour la communauté internationale. Il nous apparaît crucial que ces efforts se poursuivent et que les orientations de ces 2 prochaines années prennent en compte la nécessité de faire de l'éducation à la paix et à la non-violence un objectif commun aux nations. En effet, nous portons une responsabilité. Force est de constater qu'aujourd'hui, trop de jeunes sont les héritiers de conflits meurtriers qui nient toute dignité humaine et qui les enferment dans des mémoires douloureuses et trop lourdes à porter. Il est donc urgent de promouvoir au niveau international le dialogue entre les peuples, les cultures et les religions, essentiel pour désamorcer les préjugés et prévenir la haine qui se répand de manière croissante et inquiétante dans nos sociétés. Pour cela, Pax Christi, par son adhésion au CCIC et son travail au sein d'un groupe de 6 ONG interconfessionnelles, agit pour rendre audible un plaidoyer en faveur de la paix et encourager les États membres à mettre en place, dans leurs pays respectifs, des politiques éducatives favorisant le dialogue interreligieux et entre communautés. Pax Christi est également attentif aux conflits qui découlent d'un accès restreint aux ressources naturelles et tout particulièrement à l'eau. Grâce à sa campagne de l'eau pour la vie, Pax Christi se tient aux côtés des communautés démunies d'Amérique latine. À l'UNESCO, nous avons également rejoint le groupe des ONG de l'accès à l'eau pour tous en Afrique pour encourager la formation de techniciens hydrologues dans plusieurs pays africains. Toutes ces initiatives suivent le même esprit, qui est de pouvoir répondre à la violence par l'accueil de l'autre, la pédagogie, la justice, le partage, l'écoute et l'éducation. Car c'est en se faisant prochain de celui qui est autre que nous pourrons repousser les freins à la fraternité. Voilà la mission que se donne Pax Christi au service de la paix et de la vie. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup. J'invite maintenant Père Albert Cabuge, représentant de l'Union mondiale des enseignants catholiques auprès de l'UNESCO.
Son Excellence, la directrice générale de l'UNESCO, Madame Audrey Azoulay, chère Madame la présidente de la 42e conférence générale de l'UNESCO, cher président du comité de liaison des ONG avec l'UNESCO, M. Nick Newland. C'est avec joie, honneur et gratitude que nous nous présentons devant cette auguste assemblée au siège de l'UNESCO dans cette 42e conférence générale au cœur de Paris. Je suis membre de la famille de Don Bosco ici à Paris, cette famille salésienne qui se donne pour les jeunes. L'organisation que je présente, c'est l'UMEC, l'Union mondiale des enseignants catholiques, World Union of Catholic Teachers. C'est une organisation qui a pris forme avec la création en 1912. Ses activités ont été interrompues par les deux guerres mondiales et par après 1951, elles ont été reprises avec la fondation à Rome. Cette organisation est présente dans le monde. Nous collaborons avec le Saint-Siège, l'UNESCO. Nous sommes membres du CCIC, Centre catholique international de coopération avec l'UNESCO, et avec d'autres organisations qui ont pour mission la formation intégrale de la personne et des enseignants qui travaillent dans les écoles, les universités catholiques et laïques. Nous encourageons la solidarité, les dialogues entre les enseignants, entre les institutions éducatives. Nous visons la formation à la citoyenneté mondiale. Dans l'esprit de l'UNESCO, notre organisation, dans des moments durs qu'a vécu la société, le monde, surtout en période de Covid-19, nous avons essayé de rendre la science intelligible dans nos milieux, surtout avec les numériques, pour organiser les activités avec créativité pour marcher dans cet esprit de construire une paix durable dans notre réseau et ailleurs, par les conférences en ligne, les actions d'assistance matérielle aux enfants en difficulté dans les périphéries de nos villes. Chers membres de la conférence générale, nous tenons à notre collaboration avec l'UNESCO et avec le comité de liaison des ONG dans le secteur de l'éducation des jeunes, dans l'enseignement, que nous puissions mener des projets ensemble pour une paix durable et permanente, et nous encourageons les différents représentants des régions à collaborer avec l'UNESCO au niveau local et au niveau mondial. Nous tenons à ce que nous puissions connaître les textes officiels ou les directives qui structurent les domaines de travail de l'UNESCO. Ainsi, nous avons participé aux rencontres de la révision de la recommandation de 1974 sur l'éducation. La nouvelle mouture devient une occasion unique de raviver et d'actualiser le consensus mondial autour du rôle de l'éducation sous toutes ses formes. Nous avons participé au concours du prix Félix Houphouët-Boigny sur la paix, aux travaux sur le leadership féminin, sans oublier les rencontres des webinaires organisés par le comité de liaison des ONG et l'UNESCO. Nous remercions les organisateurs de ces assises pour cette opportunité de nous exprimer devant vous, comme UMEC WUCT marche dans cet esprit de la mission éducative pour la paix, tout en soutenant l'importance des objectifs du programme de développement durable à l'horizon 2030 des Nations Unies, qui souligne qu'il ne peut y avoir de développement durable sans la paix, ni de paix sans développement durable. Je termine cette intervention en ces termes. Nul n'ignore que l'éducation transforme la vie. Elle est un droit pour chacun tout au long de la vie. Acceptons de nous rassembler autour de l'avenir de l'éducation. Il est temps de repenser notre style d'éducation dans ce monde qui change. Merci pour votre écoute.
Merci beaucoup, Père. Mais au nom de l'équité et de l'égalité, je voudrais vous rappeler à tous la limite de 3 minutes des interventions. I invite now Dr. Salim Al-Malik, Director General of the Islamic World Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, to take the floor.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
رئيسة المؤتمر، المدير العام، الوفود الكريمة، تحية السلام في المؤتمر العام 42. لقاء جديد بأسئلة جديدة تنشد إجابات جديدة في عالم يسوده الارتياب، في ذات الوقت الذي تحدوه الآمال بتبدل الأحوال نحو غد نستحقه ويستحقنا. وهنا يكمن دور المنظمات الدولية التي تكشف الوقائع عن تصاعد وتائر الحاجة إليها، إذ يبقى الأمل معلقا بها، كلمة صادعة بالحق وفكرة تمنح الحياة معنى وجمالا. فالمنظمات الدولية إنما نشأت لترقية الحياة وصون آليات السلام والتعايش على تراه، فظلت الثقافة والعلوم والتربية أقوى أدوات ذلك المبتغى النبيل. ولذلك حين تمتد يد الإيسيسكو موثقة العهد مع اليونسكو، فإنما تختطان معا دروبا للسلام ممهدة، دروبا تتخذ من مبدأ الإنصاف منارة هادية في عالم موار بالتحولات. فيوما إثر يوم يصبح تأثر الجميع بالأحداث العالمية أكثر حساسية وعمقا. لن أحدثكم عن شواهد ذلك في الصراعات الممتدة والابتكارات المتجددة، لن أشير إلى مخاوف الركود الاقتصادي، لن أسهب في سرديات البيئة والتغير المناخي، لن أنفض الغبار عن ملفات البطالة والإرهاب والهجرات. هنا وفي كل ملمح ثمة أنظار ضامئة تتطلع إلى سحائب منظماتنا. ولأن كانت ترقية الحياة هي دور اليوم الراهن، فإن استشراف المستقبل يجسد دورا آخر في عمل منظماتنا الدولية. فلنفتح مشاريع الغد أمام مستحقيه من شبابنا، ولنشحذ في نفوسهم الثقة والطموح ليبتنوا ما هم أهل له من حياة كريمة. ولنتذكر دائما أن هذا الهدف السامي يقتضينا درجة أعلى من الإنصاف. لا تفكروا في عالم يسوده السلام دون أن يسبقه الإنصاف. والإيسيسكو باعتبارها ضمير العالم الإسلامي تلتقي في هذا المصاف مع اليونسكو بوصفها ضمير العالم أجمع، الذي يطرق بقوة على القلوب والأذهان، مسائلا عن دورنا كمنظمات حيال ما يعصف بالبشرية من سلوكيات تنافي حضارة الإنسان وإنسانية الحضارة. كيف لنا ونحن نخبة العالم علما وثقافة وتربية أن تلتقي أعيننا بعيون الأطفال والمهمات والمسنين وهم يجابهون أقسى آلات القصف والتدمير والإرهاب؟ ماذا نحن قائلون اليوم لأشلاء الضحايا في غزة ونحن في كل خطاباتنا نزعم تعلقنا بالسلام؟ أي تحضر وأية مدنية نتحدث عنهما وهما يبرآن من صمتنا إزاء ظلم الإنسان أخاه الإنسان. هنا ينبغي أن تنهض المنظمات الدولية لتقول ما تعجز عنه الحكومات، وهو الدور الذي لا أعرف دورا يضاهيه شرفا ومجدا. فلنأخذ المسؤولية بحقها، ولنحمل مستقبل الإنسانية على كواهلنا، ولنتقدم واثقين حيث تبقى كرامة الإنسان فيصلا بين من يستحقون الحياة ومن لا يستحقون الحياة. والسلام عليكم.
شكرا. I have the pleasure to invite to the floor Mr. Oleg Kurbatov, representative of the International Association of University Professors and Lecturers to UNESCO.
Madame la directrice générale, Mesdames et Messieurs les représentants des États membres, chers collègues universitaires, stimată doamnă președinte Simona Miculescu, permiteți-mi să vă felicit pentru alegerea dumneavoastră ca președinte al Conferinței Generale.
Je dois aider les traducteurs, il a parlé en roumain, je vous remercie, il m'a félicité pour être présidente.
L'Association internationale des professeurs et maîtres de conférences des universités est liée à l'UNESCO depuis bien longtemps. Ce n'est pas étonnant quand on se souvient de l'esprit qui a présidé à la création de l'UPL en 1944 à Londres, dont certains membres, comme professeur René Cassin, devaient jouer un rôle si important au moment de la création de l'UNESCO. Notre organisation ne pouvait pas rester insensible à son évolution. L'UPL a donc tenu, en renforçant le dialogue avec les États membres, à témoigner de son attachement, de sa fidélité à l'UNESCO et de sa foi de son avenir. Depuis ses origines, l'UPL a milité pour l'affirmation, le respect et la défense des libertés académiques, question qui nous paraît devoir être évoquée de nouveau aujourd'hui avec l'évolution du contexte technologique et sociétal. L'UPL apprécie une série d'événements organisés par l'UNESCO à l'égard de la liberté scientifique. Ce projet, porté par le secteur SHS dans le 42C5 révisé, pourrait trouver un lien intersectoriel avec celui de l'éducation. En effet, les universitaires du monde entier sont confrontés à une crise existentielle. Aujourd'hui, on voit certains jeunes scientifiques, docteurs, quitter l'université et renoncer à l'enseignement et à la recherche libre et désintéressée. Ceci n'est pas seulement le résultat d'une situation politique, mais aussi la conséquence d'attentes à leur statut, à leur liberté, ainsi qu'à leurs conditions de travail. Cette observation est en lien avec la présentation d'un excellent rapport mondial sur les enseignants du premier et second degré. Il nous paraît plus que nécessaire de continuer à travailler sur ce rapport en tenant compte de la spécificité de la condition du personnel de l'enseignement supérieur. À cet égard, nous soulignons l'intérêt des études de l'UPL sur la mobilité et la liberté académique susceptibles d'être prises en considération pour sa version finale. L'UPL se félicite de débats menés dans le cadre de questions d'éthique d'intelligence artificielle. Qui aurait pu imaginer en 2021 qu'un amendement proposé par un État membre, suivi d'une consultation avec l'UPL en vue de l'inscription des libertés académiques et scientifiques dans le paragraphe 112 de la recommandation sur l'éthique de l'intelligence artificielle, apporterait aujourd'hui un soutien à la communauté universitaire. Par ailleurs, nous soutenons à nouveau l'UNESCO pour le projet de l'élaboration de la future recommandation sur l'éthique de neurotechnologie. Mesdames, Messieurs, au cours de ces dernières années, nous avons réfléchi à la contribution des universitaires au maintien de la paix. Pour cela, nous avons lancé l'action de la diplomatie académique, qui, dans le respect dans les traditions universitaires fondées sur l'humanisme et la tolérance, serait à notre sens un moyen d'assurer et de garantir ce à quoi la communauté intellectuelle mondiale aspire le plus et qui a pour le nom la liberté. Je remercie. Vă mulțumim.
Vă mulțumesc foarte mult, domnule Curbatov. Merci beaucoup. J'ai consommé quelques secondes de son intervention, donc c'est pour cela que je n'ai pas fait aucune observation. Donc, j'ai le plaisir maintenant d'inviter Madame Maria Antonietta Maleo, représentante de International Fellowship of Reconciliation to UNESCO.
Thank you. Madam President of the General Conference, Madam President of the Executive Board, Madam Director General, ladies and gentlemen. IFOR was born in 1914 by believers who refused to fight each other and abandoned the self-destructive logic of war to reconcile Europe. Today we carry their baton, the witness of our Nobel laureates like Martin Luther King, who marked the history through active nonviolence, the witness of many persons of goodwill who today also in Palestine and Israel work together for reconciliation and coexistence, armed with faith and hope, according to the words of our president in Bethlehem, Zugbi Zugbi. Gandhi said that the way to peace is peace, and we join in the appeals for peace for these two peoples united in history by suffering, to stop the killing of defenseless civilians and children, and to see the pain of the other, recognizing the common humanity. We are very concerned about the normalization and escalation of the use of war for conflict resolution, the increase in military spending, the introduction of militarism in society and schools, also in Europe. Despite huge progress, the nuclear weapons ban treaty, Declaration of Human Rights, culture of peace, right to peace, the constitution of states that reject war, this involutive trend suggests a regressive phase in the history of humanity that undermines confidence in the rule of law and contradicts the UN raison d'être, putting us in danger of uncontrollable conflict. War is the most extreme act of an irrational model of development, of domination and exploitation. The philosopher Lanza del Vasto described the bomb and nonviolence as the two great powers of our time. The self-destructive technological force based on fear and nonviolence as the only creative force for conflict resolution. Youth have a great thirst for nonviolence, to which we must give a radical response. We need material and mental disarmament and a long time of educational, cultural, and social transformation. Here at UNESCO, also through the partnership of NGO, Group for Peace, interreligious dialogue, etc., we must work with a tenacious and shared effort of unity and creativity, guided by the dream that will come out of history through the force of nonviolence as principle of civilization. Therefore, we welcome the new recommendation on peace education, human rights, and sustainable development to move from the ideal to concrete change with peace and human rights education. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam. J'invite maintenant Madame Ilham Joubert au nom de la secrétaire générale du Mouvement mondial des mères.
Madame la Présidente, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Madame la Présidente, thank you for giving the floor to Make Mothers Matter. I would like to begin by reading a few revealing testimonies. Rain, a male child from Togo, says to us, open the quotes, "To be a good daughter, I should do housework and do what my parents want. Good girls behave well at home and do everything they are told to do. My parents make my sisters and I work much harder than my brothers, and we think they're right." And Valeria, another young girl from Salvador, says, "Sometimes I have to take care of mommy if she's sick. Sometimes I can do something for her, like if she can't get up. That is why I hardly go to school." These powerful yet troubling statements come from young girls, deprived from an empowering education because they are girls and kept busy at home. This reality is shared by a huge number of young girls around the world. Girls aged between 5 and 9 spend 30% more time on work around the home than boys of the same age. These mechanisms put in place from an early age determine the lives of these young girls, jeopardizing their ability to access an education that would otherwise make them autonomous. Furthermore, figures predict that by 2030, the number of care recipients, meaning children under the age of 15 and persons about 60 years old, will rise to 2.3 billion people out of 8.5 billion globally. Talking about educating and empowering young girls without taking into account the considerable weight they carry in domestic work is absolute nonsense. The Nobel Prize-winning Harvard economist Claudia Goldin has demonstrated that differences in pay and labor force participation cannot be attributed to biological differences, but to the division of unpaid caregiving and household labor between heterosexual couples. Available figures prove it categorically. The international community recognizes the importance of this systemic problem. We believe a similar parallel can be drawn with obstacles many girls face in accessing an education. It is therefore imperative that we, states, civil society, NGOs, take more direct action and intervene more earlier to prevent young girls' future from being decided as early as age 5. Reflexes and beliefs are imprinted from earliest childhood. At MMM, many grassroots associations in our member network work to change mentalities, for instance, providing young girls with adapted economic empowerment and raising awareness amongst young men, deconstructing preconceived ideas about masculinity and encouraging them to play their part in home. Such initiatives must be collectively supported, amplified, and replicated. We need to mobilize our force, act now, and act together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maintenant, j'invite Madame Evelyne Para, représentante du Soroptimist International, auprès de l'UNESCO.
Madame la Présidente, Excellences, Mesdames, Messieurs, j'ai l'honneur de m'exprimer devant vous au nom du Soroptimist International et je vous en remercie vivement. Fondé en 1921, le Soroptimist International est un mouvement mondial dotée d'un réseau de 66 000 membres bénévoles. Nous sommes toutes des femmes bénévoles implantées dans 118 pays. Les Soroptimistes défendent les droits humains pour tous dans le monde entier, sans aucune discrimination, en particulier le droit fondamental à l'éducation, à l'égalité des genres et la paix. Nous travaillons sur des projets soutenus localement qui aident les femmes et les filles à réaliser leur potentiel individuel et collectif, leurs aspirations et à avoir une voix égale dans toutes les régions. A Global Voice for Women, une voix universelle pour les femmes, afin de porter les valeurs de fraternité, de sororité, au-delà des pays et des frontières dessinées. Les différents appels lancés tous les 2 ans par la présidente de notre ONG internationale s'appuient sur les 3 piliers de notre organisation: Educate, Empower, Enable. L'appel en vigueur en 2023, intitulé Opening Doors to a Bright Future, ouvrir les portes vers un avenir radieux, est défendu localement par toutes les Soroptimistes dans le monde entier et aussi par les représentants du Soroptimist International à l'ONU dans les 7 centres spécialisés des Nations Unies dont l'UNESCO fait partie. Chaque année, plus de 4000 programmes d'action sont ainsi réalisés par les Soroptimistes sur le terrain en partenariat avec des associations locales. Ces actions permettent de décloisonner, d'ouvrir de nouvelles portes et de transformer les mentalités pour une vie meilleure dans de nombreux domaines. Tout d'abord, pour développer un accès à l'information, aux ressources, aux services, à des sociétés plus justes et plus sûres, à une science ouverte, à une transition en toute sécurité vers des sociétés numériques et vertes, afin de permettre à chacun de faire des choix positifs de vie, mais aussi pour lutter contre les causes profondes des vulnérabilités et des inégalités liées au genre, à la situation socio-économique, à la culture, à la religion ou encore à l'âge, afin de supprimer les obstacles à l'apprentissage et à la participation de chaque citoyen. Et enfin, pour faire reconnaître, respecter et apprécier l'altérité, les différences et les identités multiples, afin de vivre en harmonie les uns avec les autres. C'est pourquoi nous appelons de nos vœux le renforcement d'un partenariat entre tous les États membres, avec les services de l'UNESCO et avec toutes les ONG, dans un réel esprit d'inclusion. Pour notre ONG Soroptimist International, c'est la seule chance d'espérer atteindre les objectifs de développement durable, notamment les objectifs de paix que nous avons tous à cœur de réussir d'ici 2030. Au nom de toutes les femmes, et en particulier des Soroptimistes, je vous remercie de votre écoute.
Merci beaucoup. It is a very nice slogan with which we finish our list of speakers: empower, educate, enable. That's a very good slogan, Madam. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said, we listened to the last speaker of the session, but I wish to inform you that the delegation of Japan has asked for the right of reply. In accordance with the Rule 70 of our Rules of Procedure, I will accord the right to reply for 2 minutes. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, giving us a floor. During the course of speeches, there was some reference to the Japanese education system and our nomination to World Heritage. In our education system, there is no policy or rule that allows discrimination against Korean residents. On our support programs to high schools and early childhood education facilities, you are eligible for such support regardless of race, ethnicity, and nationality. If you meet the criteria stipulated by laws and regulations, and if you don't, on the contrary, you are not eligible. Therefore, I must say that it is groundless to claim that our system is discriminatory. And it's not at all acceptable to attempt to politicize UNESCO World Heritage by focusing on the point that it is nothing to do with cultural value. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. I would like to also inform you that the delegation of Turkey also asked for the right of reply. So in accordance with the Rule 70 of our Rules of Procedure, I invite Turkey to make the statement.
Thank you, Madam President. Turkey is exercising its right of reply in connection to a speech delivered this morning. Firstly, it should be stressed that there is no occupation on the island of Cyprus, and accordingly, there is no United Nations resolutions to that effect. While presenting as a champion of conservation of cultural heritage, the Greek Cypriot administration refrains from taking the necessary measures to prevent the continuous destructive attacks on Turkish Muslim heritage situated in South Cyprus. To this day, no one has been prosecuted for these attacks. It should also be noted that a bicommunal technical committee on cultural heritage was established in 2008 under UN auspices with a view to contributing to the restoration of cultural heritage on both sides of the island. The Turkish Cypriot side has strongly supported the said committee from its inception and continues to facilitate the work of the committee. As for education, it should be noted that Turkish Cypriot authorities fully facilitate the education of Greek Cypriot youth living in the Karpis area in North Cyprus. In fact, separate primary and secondary schools have been established providing their education in their mother tongue. On the contrary, despite the repeated recommendations of the relevant UN Secretary Generals and the reports of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, a Turkish medium primary school is yet to be established in South Cyprus for the Turkish Cypriot children. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Another right of reply was requested by the representatives of DPRK, and I would like to grant them the right to reply according to the Rule 70. So, Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The arguments and remarks made by the Japanese delegation regarding discrimination in education of the children of Korean residents in Japan, as well as its application for nomination of Sado Mine as World Cultural Heritage, are simply not true. The reality is that the Japanese authorities are excluding children of Korean residents in Japan from high school and kindergarten supporting list for the reason that they learn Korean language. And it is true that in order to cover up the history of Korean forced labor, Japan has cut off part of the application document previously submitted for inscription as World Cultural Heritage. Japanese authorities' refusal to recognize discriminatory acts against the children of Korean residents in Japan is an attempt to hide their national chauvinism and violates even the basic human rights to education, and they are seeking to distort their past crimes by erasing the history of Korean forced labor in Sado Mine, and this abusing the UNESCO's prestige and name. Japan's actions of misusing UNESCO stage to pursue their impure purposes are absolutely unacceptable and deserve strong condemnation from the international community. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I was informed that Japan asked again for a right of reply, but I would like to respectfully ask you to not give it, because then we won't end the session. So I respectfully ask you to give up the right of reply.
Okay, we accept the order of the Madam Chair.
Thank you very much for understanding. Thank you so much. Well, this actually highlights the very productive and efficient morning that we had. And thank you for your cooperation to all of you. We had a pretty intense but very interesting and inspiring week. I wish you a very good weekend, and I'll see you on Monday morning at 10 a.m. sharp. The meeting is adjourned.